Wonderful, and welcome to the Scotchy Bourbon Boys podcast. I am Tiny, and we are going to be podcasting real soon, getting right onto this, because tonight we are going to be covering what it takes to be a bourbon steward, and also what it takes to as a bourbon steward, what kind of services that the Scotchy Bourbon Boys and myself, Tiny, offer. So one of the cool things that we're going to do is we're going to be doing that tonight. So let's just get started with the podcast. I'm going to start recording right now. I can't wait, because this is going to be fucking awesome. I mean, honestly, here we go.
Dant Crossing, Gethsemane, Kentucky. Timeless hospitality that stirs the spirit. Dant Crossing is a one-of-a-kind destination for unforgettable weddings, memorable corporate events, day trips, and weekend getaways. The pastoral campus is anchored by Log Still Distillery and includes an amphitheater that seats 2,000, a 12-acre lake for fishing and unique lodging options, creating an immersive experience that's rooted in the community and culture of our little slice of Kentucky. More attractions will open soon at Dant Crossing, including our 21,000 square foot distillery, which we will have the ability to produce 15,000 barrels of spirit each year, a network of wooded walking trails, fully functional private train depot, farm-to-table restaurant, and the Legacy, a premier wedding and events venue. Whether you're looking to host an event, book a stay, or reserve a tasting, we're ready to welcome you. Learn more at dantcrossing.com.
Spirits of French Lick is proud to introduce the Matty Gladden Bottled and Bond Bourbon. This 4-year aged bourbon is double pot distilled and non-chill filtered, and has a full-bodied mouthfeel with eucalyptus, molasses, clove, ginger, and slight citrus, as well as grains of paradise. The finish is long and reappearing on the back of the tongue with notes of pepper, tobacco leaf, and mint green. All of our spirits are available for tasting and purchase inside the French Lick Winery and Distillery. Spirits of French Lick, respect the grain, please enjoy responsibly, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die.
Oh, all right. Welcome back to another Scotchy Bourbon Boy podcast. I am refreshed. I am Tiny of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Tonight we are going to be covering the aspect of me being a bourbon steward and the awesome tasting that I did last night for Julie Brundle at Metis Construction Company. It was just an absolute blast what we did. I just want to cover it tonight, but also want to get a couple things out of the way here. Remember, we are the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. We are on all major podcast formats. Please, if whatever you're listening to us on, please like, subscribe, and then also leave comments. Feedback is awesome, and we need it so that we can keep growing this podcast and the Scotchy Bourbon Boys larger and larger. What we're offering and what's happening is just going off the charts. We are also on Facebook, our Facebook group. Please join us. That Facebook group is local, but it's got a lot of people from around the world in it, but it keeps you up to date on what's happening in the actual group where we meet every couple months. Our next meeting is April 22nd at the Barrel Room in North Canton. Everybody's welcome to come. We have Ann Dimmick coming down from OHLQ, that's Ohio Liquor. She is going to explain a lot of things to us. And then after that, right after that meeting, we are going to go live on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on Zavvi and do our whiskey live tasting. I haven't decided on the bourbon, but I got to do that. Oh, it's Green River. Green River bourbon just came out. It used to be the Ozzie Tyler Distillery. It is now the Green River Distillery. They released their bourbon. It's exciting. Hopefully it's going to be a bump up of what I like compared to what I was getting before. But from all the standpoints of what's been going on and what I'm hearing, it's supposed to be pretty spectacular. So don't miss April 22nd, our live meeting at the Barrel Room in North Canton. Carrie Sullivan there does a great job. I can't wait for what goes on April 22nd. Also, you can follow me, Jeffrey Mueller, on Facebook, but then also we are on Instagram as the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. We are on YouTube as the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. We now are on TikTok as the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. That's pretty exciting. I've been putting up some videos there. My infamous bottle chug is up on TikTok. If you haven't seen it, check that out. And then also we are on Instagram and Twitter, all under the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. On Twitter, it's @ScotchyThe. Check that all out. But also remember www.scotchybourbonboys.com. We are on the net. It gives you all the information about who we are, the bios, and you also can buy some great swag. Also, we sell bourbon balls on there. We're going to be making another batch coming up soon. Start pushing that again. So lots of exciting things going on. So that covers that part of what I'm doing. But tonight, one of the cool things that through my bourbon journey that I've been taking since in the last 3 years, one of the cool things is that I become a bourbon steward. Now, an executive bourbon steward. The first step of becoming a bourbon steward, I did down at Wilderness Trail. We went there with Macaulay. He's in charge of the barrel selection program for Wilderness Trail and a lot of other things promoting the distillery. We had podcasted with Pat Heiss and Shane Baker earlier that day, but we took the executive bourbon steward, not the executive, but just the bourbon steward class. And in that class, there was tasting sensory that you learn how your different tastes affect your palate. And there was a lot of different paper sensory type stuff that was going on, tastes on paper where you would taste the paper. Some would taste, it would taste different to everybody, but you kind of started learning all the different flavors of what's in bourbon and whiskey. And then everybody kind of sat in and we had samples of different whiskeys. We set up our own flight. Macaulay went over what you want to do when you're making your own flight, but then we all got to do a barrel pick. So we picked from 4 different barrels, and then whatever one you liked, you could pick. And I think the consensus, we all picked the same barrel. And the bottle that it was already bottled. Once you got it, that's the way it was working. And you got to take that bottle with you. But then also you got the booklet and you had to study up on all the different types of whiskeys. You had to understand what Scotch is and Irish whiskey, and you had to know what bourbon is, and you had to know what American whiskey is and Canadian whiskey. So they went through all that. Plus they went through a lot of different histories and that type of thing in the book. So then once you were done with studying from the book, you basically went online and took a test, because you did the studying once we got back home in Ohio from Kentucky. We took the test. I believe, out of a score of 100, I got 98. So out of 98 out of 100, and I got my bourbon steward, and they sent me the pin and introduced me into the Stave and Thief Society. Now, last September, myself and Super Nash, who was a part of that first bourbon steward certificate, and then becoming part of the Stave and Thief Society. It's a lifetime membership into it. You're a bourbon steward, and everybody kind of has this. It's a group of people who have passed, and everybody kind of knows each other, and you see each other out in the world. So this past September, myself and Super Nash, we went down to Louisville, which they have a moonshine university. So they have a working still or a distillery right there on premise plus classroom. So they have a classroom setting. Everybody's throughout the whole day. It was a whole day where we did different parts of distilling. We learned all about different types of bourbon and tasting. But in this executive bourbon program that we were taking, you got a sensory smell sensory kit, a nosing kit, so that you could understand all the different flavors that are in bourbon and other whiskeys, toast, caramel, vanilla, all the different alcohols that are on the heads, then all the different alcohols that are in the hearts and the tails, all the different, there's acetones and acetates and all this kind of stuff so you can pick up what they smell like. And then they also gave you heads. They gave you the heads, the hearts, and the tails, and then lots of different other flavors that you'd smell: bananas, earthy, herbal, all those smells that you might not know, but you can teach yourself to learn what they smell like, so that when you smell it in the bourbon or the whiskey, you're able to understand what you're smelling. Because a lot of times when you're smelling a bourbon or a whiskey and it smells like something and you can't put your thumb on it, it's because you don't know what that smell is. I mean, you got to know what cardamom smells like, or cassia, or different flavors. You got to know what it actually smells like to actually pick it out of your memory when you're smelling a bourbon. So that's the training. We went there. I got a half wrong. The question was about what does the char do in the barrel, and I picked it, half of the four multiple choice. It was A and E, and I had picked E, so I was able to get a 99 out of 100 on that particular test. And they gave you your executive bourbon steward pin, which I have there and I wear proudly now. And they also taught you what to do when you're doing tastings and flights with other people. There was a blind tasting in there. I was very happy that I was able to pick out what the bourbon was. And then you also end up with your executive bourbon steward. You've got that right there. It's your executive steward coin. You have to have this at all times on you, because if you run into somebody as an executive bourbon steward and they ask you for it and you don't have it on you, you're buying drinks. That's just the way that this works. It's crazy that it works that way, but when I had momentarily misplaced this in my sock drawer, but it was during October and November when I wasn't really going out too much. So but I found it. And so I have it on me at all times. I'm not misplacing this ever again, because I don't want to buy drinks. I want people to buy me drinks. So that's kind of a cool thing. So once I became an executive bourbon steward, that means you're allowed to do tastings. Now, the tastings, I've always naturally, now that we've been doing the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, I love to do tastings. I was practicing with flights on anybody who would come over. And with what we've designed on the logo and what I've done, last night was one of was set up to be the largest tasting that I had done. When you're talking about 25 people, a chance for 25 people to taste whiskey, 1 ounce pours, every single bottle that you're going to be tasting, it's a whole bottle. So you got to come up with, you have to have the whiskey to do the tasting. So that's one thing that I do as executive bourbon steward. I've go around. I love to wait in lines at distilleries, at the local grocery store, at their liquor stores, and just talk to the people, because talking to the people and telling people about the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, giving out cards, really brings me closer to you guys, the listeners, and that's what I want to do. So that's kind of a cool thing. But at the same time, I keep coming across really good bourbons and whiskeys. Today, I picked up the Woodford Reserve 5 grains or 5 grains barley, 5 barley stouted whiskey. So it's got 5 different barleys and they're stouted, and they made a malt with, a single malt whiskey. There are 5 single malt stouted malts, toasted malts. So it's really kind of cool. I picked that bottle up. I now have it, so I can do it and use it in a tasting, or I can do it and use it whatever I want. But one of the things that I've set up is the first thing. Let's say you want to get a tasting from me. First, I need to know how many people we're talking about. 6, 8, 4 couples. What's the makeup of the room, where we're going to do it. I will come to your house. I will do this online. I will do tastings online. Tiny will do, from the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, does tastings online. I will do it however you want to do it. Right now, you could see my setup if you're watching on YouTube, but my setup really is right here, consists of 4 different bourbons. And this is the tasting from last night. I had E.H. Taylor small batch. I had Weller Antique 107. I had Stag Junior barrel strength. And I had Parker's Heritage finished bourbon, finished in orange Curacao liqueur barrels. So as far as price goes, this was my top line bourbon selection. So when they asked me what could I present them, I came up with 3 tastings. I came up with tastings that were readily available bourbons, but what I thought was a good bourbon. So they were around $50 bottles, but they were all readily available. I believe Woodford Reserve Double Oak, Buffalo Trace. There was, and I don't remember offhand, but there was 4 bourbons that way. Then there was the mid-level, and then this was the top level. You're talking about every one of these bourbons here are allocated. You have to wait in line to get them. So the Parker Heritage, I waited in line at Heaven Hill. The Stag Junior, the 107, and the E.H. Taylor, I wait at my local liquor stores or whatever, and I'm able to obtain these bourbons by waiting in line. So that's one of the things as a bourbon steward and doing tastings, you got to have the bourbon. Now the podcast lends me to have the bourbon. Now if I'm doing a 6 to 8 person tasting, which is the one of the like more of a personal level tasting, you're still talking about 8 times 4, which is 32 glasses. So I can supply the glassware. This 25 tasting, I had to have 100 glasses. I was about 3 dozen short. So I expanded my Glencairn collection so that I was able to have the Scotchy Bourbon Boys Glencairn. That's what this is right here. We sell these on our website, but this Scotchy Bourbon Boy Glencairn that I'm showing the people on YouTube, you can see it's got the Scotchy Bourbon Boy logo, and there goes the topper. So one of the things, there's a lot of stuff that can go in to make it a really cool experience. So you've got the four Scotchy Bourbon Boys glasses, or 3 glasses in a blank glass, or last night, what I did is I had blank glasses or the Scotchy Bourbon Boy glasses, but I picked out one Glencairn that I had picked up from the distillery, and I picked that up and I put it in the tasting, and whoever sat down with that glass, I gave away Scotchy Bourbon Boys Glencairn to that person. It turned out to be Julie, the wonderful woman who contacted me to do this for them. It was just a super awesome experience doing a tasting of that size. Eventually 13 people total tasted, but I had everything set up for those 25 people. You gotta be set up for the most. Okay. So that meant that, I got there, I brought in the glassware. That's probably the hardest thing that you have to do. You have to have it all boxed up. I got my own dolly, I wheel it in, I had to make sure all the glasses had been hand cleaned and checked by me specifically. I wanted them to be polished. I wanted to make sure that that there was no chance. One time I had ordered Glencairns they come from the UK, and there was actually a bug, a millipede, in one of the glasses. And then because they were brand new, I had just pulled it out and it soaked up the bourbon. So I learned a lesson there. It was for friends, but I just wanted to make sure that there was no millipedes in my new glasses. And washing 100 and polishing 100 glasses is kind of a fun thing to do for me. I enjoy doing the polishing. But then we came up with, a lot of times everybody has these plastic toppers. Well, we came up with these bamboo kind of toppers that my wife found, and she then had a rubber stamp made, and she stamped them so they look like mini wood barrel heads. So we were using those. So once we poured the 4-pour, that this all worked out. I'll just go with this because he ended up as the main distiller at Heaven Hill. Heaven Hill is the largest family-owned distillery in the United States. The Shapiras own it, and Max and everybody, and they run it, and they keep getting bigger. They keep acquiring, but Parker, a couple years ago, passed away, and he passed away of ALS. So he has a bunch of stuff that he distilled, and he's aging. And Denny Potter is now the head distiller at Heaven Hill. He's been at a couple different places. He's been at Maker's Mark, and he's been at, I believe, he worked for Brown Forman for a while, but he's now at Heaven Hill. And him, and I'll give you the master blender there, came up with this. Now, let's stay. Here we go. This is 7 to 8 year old aged top floor from Warehouse Q bourbon. Then they pulled it out and put it in orange curacao liqueur barrels for 4 months. And they blended it with Alan Royer, who is their master blender. So the master distiller and the master blender came up with this particular batch. Now, this one is $149 at the distillery, but it sells up to $700 to $800 secondary because it's a limited edition. Now, this one you might like. Here's orange. So there's a little bit of fruitiness. You're going to get orange soda. This is 110 proof. It's not a lightweight, but I like to look at this as a dessert.
The color's more amber instead of.
Yeah, you're picking up. It's a deeper, but it picks up. It's almost like the orange curacao barrels added that orange color.
So when we look at the color, is it the same like when we were taught that you pulled up a red wine and it should be on a light colored wall, like white or beige or something, to get Is it the same way with
I usually
bourbon,
hold
or-
it up to the light
Just to
because
the
I want to
light.
see how clear it is
Okay.
and what's coming through. Now, some of the barrel strengths will be cloudy because they're just pulling them straight out of the barrel. They're not filtering them. They put it through a non-cold chill filter. Most bourbons, because if bourbon gets too cold, it will cloud up. But the barrel strengths, they skip it. And they'll be cloudy if it gets too cold. The other thing I did was this wonderful tasting mat. The Scotchy Bourbon Boys will supply tasting mats for your tasting. So you can see it's a standard, but whatever you're picking as far as the whiskeys go, and I will put those logos onto the tasting mat, and each one has a place for notes, and you've got all your tasting, what you can taste, and is it spicy, is it hot, is it sweet, is it bit, you've got all the information you need to do a nice tasting and fill out, so you can go along and rate it and figure out and teach the people what they're looking for and what are the flavors and tastes. So on the one, once again, the toppers, so you pour into the glass, the specific bourbons. I had the bar shot pour that I was using to pour, and I would pour I poured 13 of one, 13 of another, 13 of another. Then I had them all on their tasting mats, each one coinciding with each, space. And then like I do right here. And then that way they know exactly what the bourbon is when they're tasting, when they pick it up, they know that that's the Parker Heritage or the Weller. So it's really kind of a good thing that way, but also they've got these little covers keeping in and making it so that when they nose it, open it up and they nose it, they're going to get some nice flavors. The other thing I did was open these up all a day before, let them air in the bottle, let all the air out for about 10-15 minutes. Then I put the cap back on, flipped it once to shake it up, and then I took it to, loaded it up the next day in the car, took it. But when I got there right away, I opened up all the bottles. That's the first thing I did. Opened up, took the cap off all the bottles, put on the pour toppers, and then let that sit for about 10 minutes before I started pouring, just to make sure that we were getting the really good flavors off of the tasting. Now, the tastings, when I'm doing a tasting, I'll give you history of the distillery. And the great thing about history is the distillery itself will a lot of times give you a lot of history about Parker Beam, about Harlan Wheatley and that type of thing, but also history. Because bourbon is like a Buffalo Trace distillery, there's a lot of stuff written about it in history, and there's always more things you can find out about it. There's a lot of stuff you can find out about it as E.H. Taylor, about E.H. Taylor and what he did, when he was running the Old Fire Copper, and then he sold it to George T. Stagg. Then it eventually went to Albert Blanton, and then eventually to Elmer T. Lee, and then, to Harlan Wheatley. And it's just overall how the whole thing goes down in the history. It's really kind of cool. But then while I'm talking about the history and we're starting to sample, I'll also put in a little bit about the technique of tasting, how you're supposed to taste in a Glencairn, what are the advantages of using that special whiskey glass, why a Glencairn. I go over all that stuff while we're doing the tasting. So like I said, the key things is location. So I could do bourbon tasting on location at a bar or restaurant, but if you do it at a bar or restaurant, you have to basically do it with the alcohol that the bar and the restaurant can supply. If I do it at a business, basically I obtain bottles that you purchase. So you purchase the bottles and then I pour them out and everybody tastes them. Or if I do it at home, I can bring you the bottles with me and do the tasting that way. Now, there's going to be, I like to do 3 different levels. So I'll talk to you about what kind of bourbon or what kind of whiskey you like. And then I'll come up with, we'll find out what the date is. If it's a couple weeks away or whatever, I'll contact you and I'll have 3 different tasting levels and the cost of the bourbon that we're dealing with, that you'll have to let me know what level you want to taste at. That is something I can't control. I have to get the bourbons and they cost what they cost. Whether I get them, I mean, I'm able to obtain pretty much anything if the cost isn't an issue. But if we're talking an issue, I can get most things also, and I can get them at the reasonable price that we pay in Ohio. So, and I won't let you know anything. Now, if you have specific bourbons you want to taste, then I'd have to go out and then I'd let you know what I can get them for you. And then, so that part is down. Now, I have my fee plus with travel, depending on how far. It's been an issue lately, as everybody knows, with the price of gas. So I have a travel fee. Unless I'm close, then there's none. But if I usually will go out about between 2 and 2.5 hours is about as far out as I want to go. But if I'm traveling to where you are, for instance, if you're in Indiana and I can go there and coincide it with going there and then doing the tasting, it's a possibility, or Kentucky or whatnot. So just don't ever think I won't come. But so like if we're doing it for the corporate, that's one thing. You know, that's what I did last night. I went through, I did the tasting, had all the things set up. I got it all set up before their meeting, waited for the meeting to be over, did the tasting, then cleaned up and got out of there. So if I'm doing it for you at your home, I can come to your house. I'll bring the glassware. I can bring the whiskey. I will make special tasting mats for you. That is, I usually charge for arranging and doing it. That's a cost. And then I will bring the glassware. Now, all my glassware is available for purchase when I'm there. So everybody know that if you need to purchase a Glencairn on the website, it's $15. But usually, I believe I charge. No, I think it's on the website. It might be 18 because it includes shipping. So it's $15 per Glencairn. So know that. And then as far as the personal aspect, I love it because it's a little bit closer quarters. I will work around an evening. If you're having couples over or you're having a dinner, let me know what time, and I set it up all professionally with the mats, with the glassware, get it all set up. Everybody comes down and I love doing this, put it that way. I love talking to people, finding out what they like, finding out who likes spicy, who likes hot, who likes sweet, who likes high proof, who likes low proof. It's just a fun time. So then the last aspect of what we offer is it's an online tasting. It would be a Zoom meeting. I have no problem. And I could do it any way you want. One, we could pick the bourbons, and what I'll do is I'll send you a kit with samples of those bourbons. So if you have let's say you're doing this, I am going to be sending you sample bottles such as this, 2-ounce samples. Normally the pours for my normal tasting, the pours will be 1-ounce pours. So if we're dealing with 4, I don't want to give you 2-ounce pours because 4 2-ounce pours will, it's just too much whiskey for people if they're drinking, driving, whatnot. But it's 1 ounce pours are my standard pour. Same thing here. Now, if we're going to do this online, I will send you a 2 ounce pour of each one. And if we're doing 3 people, 2 people, I'll send the pours accordingly to how many people are going to be tasting. In the meeting, you'll have what you need to do the tasting. I could send you 1 glass Glencairn, and you could use your own glassware, or I could send you all the glassware. But like I said, that would be a separate price. Plus, I'll make you your special tasting mats so that you could be set up tasting with me on a specific time on Zoom, and I will go through the tasting as if we were doing it in person. But like I said, all that we just talked about, the price just is determined by what you're asking me to do. It can be all rearranged and moved around. I can give you the price for 10 and under. I have a specific price for people, and then anything over 10, it's more because of the fact of how much hauling and moving and shipping or whatever you have to do. It's a little bit more difficult to put it on and make it come out the way it does right here. So this is just about, what you get in your tasting. You get somebody. Now, just remember, bourbon is so subjective. Last night, I had a guy at the tasting, and he kind of let me know that of these 4 bourbons, really the only one he could taste any flavor on was the Stag Junior, which was the barrel proof. And initially he's like, they all taste like just like rubbing alcohol to me. And he said he got a little, so I thought at first, well, it's all too strong. What should we do as far as, thinking to myself as far as lowering that proof? And then he was telling me this, and he says all his friends drink bourbon and they love it, and he can't taste it. And I'm thinking, well, we could find you a bourbon if we work hard. So all of a sudden I'm telling him about Basil Hayden, which is an 80 proof, and but he says to me, but I tasted the Stag Junior. I could taste something. And then I realized it's his taste buds are they're neutral to the whiskey. So it takes a 130 proof whiskey to wake up the taste. But this 130 proof whiskey, which I'm going to have a little bit right now, this is the Stag Junior. And really, last night I got to taste my bottle for the first time. I had only tasted this one other time at Gervasi, which is the place where I go locally to hang out and have a good time. I'm putting this back, but he basically was saying, so what I did is I came up with rare breed, wild turkey rare breed. Now, Stag Junior, 130 proof. This is going to be this expression of batch 17 of Stag Junior is so good. It's such a complex. It's not as sweet, but there's so much going on with it. I mean, there's brown sugar. There's a little earthy aspect of it. There's, let's see, cherries. I always thought that root beer, what was it? Like a ginger. Wait. There's actually a little bit of floral on the nose. Put one of my barrel heads on top of that. Let some of that nose build up in there. But this is not a sweet bourbon. There's sugar. There's like mid-palate sugar. There's a really nice burn. not burn, but a hug, a really nice hug. Tons of vanilla. Wow. Got a whiff of ethanol there. A freshness, like a I would say a little bit of, I'm just getting that sugary, a little bit of honey, a little bit of candied fruits. Delicious bourbon. And so overall, the Parker Heritage, which a lot of people in the whiskey industry are not a fan of, but last night of the 13 people tasting, 10 like the Parker Heritage, 2 like the Stag, and 1 like the Weller as far as the best. And they loved them all. But that Parker Heritage in the Orin Curacao liqueur barrels was the popular of the and so you get surprised when you're doing the tastings. But so with that said, it's time again. So let's see what happens. I am going to just go over all the stuff. I mean, www.scotchybourbonboys.com. Check us out on all the major podcast formats. Please leave all a good comment. Make sure you subscribe or like on whatever you're listening to. Spotify, we're on them all. And then just remember, check us out on all social media. The newest one is TikTok that we've been trying to do. We've been doing some YouTube shorts, pushing the YouTube hard and heavy, but also pushing the podcast. So once again, I'm Tiny of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. I'm an executive bourbon steward, and I would love to be able to do a tasting for you. This is kind of like what I'm finding out is my passion. So until next week, everybody, I'm going to have a little bit of this. Remember, good bourbon equals good times and good friends, and go out there and live your life dangerously. Cheers.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die.
All right, we've stopped recording on the actual podcast, but we're still here on YouTube. I did remember one thing that if you want a tasting, please contact me. Contact me on Facebook through Facebook Messenger. Send me an email through the scotchybourbonboys@gmail.com. I am making myself available and scheduling out right now. I'd like to do 3 to 4 tastings a month. So check out, talk to me about what we can get done. I mean, I'd love to, if you're in the Ohio area, I'd love to come to your house. I'd love to come do a corporate tasting or business tasting. Available for that. Make sure if you know anybody that says, hey, do you know anybody who can do whiskey tasting for a group of my friends? Just throw it out there. Tiny from the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Give them our information. I do have, it's all up on the website, but still, the best way to contact me through Facebook Messenger all day long. I'm getting Facebook messengers. And then also, if you look on the website, you actually can contact me on my phone. My phone number is on the website. So you can send me a text Those are all the different ways to get a hold of me. But would love to do something for anybody. Come up with a really cool flight. One of the fun things of doing the tastings is coming up with the different bourbons and flights. I think about that a lot. I taste a ton of bourbon, and there's a lot of stuff I have that a lot of people, I've got a lot of non-Kentucky bourbon here that is very delicious that I could put together in a tasting, like a non-Kentucky bourbon tasting. I could do a Kentucky bourbon. I pretty much got a lot of it covered, but if I don't have it already, and you're talking about in a larder, I'm able to figure out how to get it. So let me know. Remember, everybody, good bourbon equals good friends and good times. Go out there, live your life dangerously, and thank you. Thank you so much for supporting us. We appreciate every like, we appreciate every comment, and thank you. All right. Good night, everybody.
The watershed story. A watershed moment might be pivotal, but it might also be quiet and fleeting. It could be a monumentous occasion, a cause for celebration, an enormous triumph, or a small daily victory. A watershed moment could be a rekindling or an observation or a gathering. Any opportunity to relish with friends and family. It's whatever you choose to cheers to, who you're gathered around, and whatever's worth celebrating. We founded Watershed Distillery on the principles of community in 2010. We wanted to live in, work in, and contribute to the community in which we grew up. We aimed to create spirits and stood apart in quality and character. Along the way, we set out to form a community of our own, one that could gather together to savor, celebrate, and enjoy good spirits and company. We've grown from a tiny little still and 2 guys in jumpsuits to a dedicated team of over 40 people and 2 much larger stills. If you're ever in the area, stop by so we can introduce you to our team and pour you some of our award-winning bourbon. Creating it was our watershed moment, but we want to hear about yours.